So there's like a glaring RGB problem with the motherboard that I've used in my build. And so I kind of went on the hunt for a solution to this, and then I figured I'd go ahead and make a video about this because it's actually pretty neat. It's cooler than I thought it was going to be. So let's talk about the scenario if you find yourself in where you don't have enough RGB headers, but you also don't want to deal with having 56 million different types of RGB software on your system.
Get amazing prices on the brands you love at Micro Center. Micro Center has over 30,000 items in stock, including desktops, laptops, computer components, monitors, TVs, and more. Not sure which parts to choose for your next build? Then use Micro Center's custom PC builder to find compatible parts, create your parts list, add them to your cart, and use same-day pickup at one of Micro Center's 25 locations nationwide. And if you're not comfortable building it, one of Micro Center's professional builders can build it for you as fast as same day for a fee. And if you need ideas for a build, then head to Micro Center's Build Showcase for great build inspiration, or submit your build for others to see. To see everything that Micro Center has to offer, click the link in the description below.
So this is the $1,000 plus Maximus Z790 Extreme, or the Z790 Maximus Extreme from Asus. It's the board that I used in the Skunkworks Revival build. But if you guys remember in that video, I showed how my lighting was not working how I wanted, and that's because of the fact that when it comes to ARGB or addressable RGB, there's only so many LEDs that can fit on a channel, if you will. Now, typically motherboards would have like 1 or 2 ARGB headers at the top, and then maybe 1 or 2 ARGB headers at the bottom, allowing you to use splitters to be able to have like maybe your fans on a channel, and then like maybe some like your water cooling stuff on another channel. Because I have the distro plate that has a ton of RGBs in it. I've got the pump that has RGBs in it. Both pumps have RGBs in it, including the reservoirs. I've got the plate I made with RGB behind it. We've got the CPU block that has RGB. All my fans have RGBs. So if there's a certain number of LEDs that are supported per channel, typically those numbers of LEDs has specifically to do with like amps and watts and volts for the amount of power that can make its way all the way down the line. The problem is the high-end motherboard like this only has one addressable RGB header at the bottom, which is the 3-pin. It does have a 4-pin 12 volt, but none of my devices are 12 volt. They're all 5 volt ARGB. And then it has another header right there, which is kind of like a funky proprietary header that splits off into 2. Now this is for the RGB like 2.0 Connect stuff. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but some devices in the market, you can have them all plugged into a splitter, but then individually control them because it's kind of like the next evolution of ARGB that works with Asus ROG stuff. But I don't have any of those devices. They're just dumb ARGB. And what I mean by dumb is the fact that they don't communicate back to the controller saying, this is what I am. So I needed a solution because here's what unfortunately happened. I've been using this control box that comes with the motherboard. So this has 6 channels on it, channel 1 through 6, and then it's also got 6 ARGB headers. I thought, because of the fact that it has auxiliary power, which is just a proprietary 6-pin plug here that terminates to a standard like SATA power, and we have a USB connection right here and an ARGB in, I thought this was going to give me 6 more RGB channels, but it doesn't. The only reason the USB is on here is so that it can communicate with the fan hub part for smart fan control, which I'm not using for any of my fans on this, by the way, in my system at home. I'm just using it for the RGB. So all this does is take this ARGB signal and split it 6 ways. So it's not actually allowing me to have any more connected devices, if you will. So it worked fine for a while. I've had my system done now for a couple months, I think. And you guys know I have like this vaporwave, really cool kind of effect that I took a lot of time sort of programming and making it all how I wanted. And I came into my my game room at home the other day and I turned on my computer and suddenly I was dealing with like baby green, drank too much vomit brown, and random colors happening everywhere. So what I suspect happened, I think I overloaded the controller, and I don't think this is Asus's fault, this is mine. What I think would be on Asus is this realistically should have been 6 additional channels. Because it's USB, there's no reason this couldn't have talked to like Aura or Armory Crate and been 6 more ARGB channels. That's really the way it should have been, which means then the amount of LEDs I would have had limited to per channel would have been that times 6 rather than overall, which is what I've been dealing with. But it worked. The telltale sign though that I was on the edge or was actually over the limit regarding the number of LEDs, and this is still a glaring problem with ARGB as a whole without there being like a quote unquote standard that things will sort of communicate back to the controller, is I couldn't do solid colors like white. If I tried to set my solid colors to white, then anything above like 40% brightness would then, some of the devices would be green, some would be blue, some would be red. And that was just because it wasn't able to provide enough power to illuminate all of the LEDs at full brightness, which is what it takes to create white. The R, the red, the G, the green, and the B, the blue, have to all go full bright to get white. So as I reduced the brightness, I was able to get white because it didn't have as much power draw. So I just said, oh, it's fine, I'm never gonna use white, so it didn't matter to me. Well, I do think I overloaded the controller in terms of however that signal is being split, just by the amount of amps being drawn through it with the amount of LEDs in my system. Because now is why I get this super dim, sort of a baby poop color and vomit color, which is really, really gross. I mean, you guys can see it right here. It's not pretty at all. So I went and searched for a solution, and I found this. This is not sponsored in any way. This is not, I paid for this. I bought 2 of these. This is the Razer Chroma RGB hub. So it's nothing but an ARGB controller. And it's rubber right here. I didn't even realize that. That's rubber. So it can mount to anywhere a 2.5-inch SSD can mount. So it's got these 4 screws. So if you have extra sleds in your case or whatever, you can mount them down to that. It's got a barrel connector that terminates to a SATA plug. And then it's got a USB 2.0 interface here because obviously you need a way to talk to it. So as you can see right now, I actually have Razer Chroma open. So I guess there wasn't a whole lot of mystery as to what we were talking about in this video. But what I was hoping for here, Razer's another one of those companies that people are either gonna love it or they're gonna hate it. I've actually had really good history with Synapse in the past, using it for other devices. The downside is the fact that it's another control box. So if you've got like a Asus motherboard, and then maybe you're using like a Corsair AIO, and then now you're using RGB fans and stuff, you could still potentially have 3 controllers going. But I've read that this works really well with Signal RGB as well as Open RGB. So because it's becoming more hub controller support in those third-party softwares, we're starting to get closer to a single, more unified standard of controlling RGB. And as long as brands are willing to be open with their controller boxes and their software, then we can start to get more and more support for having a single piece of software controlling all of our lighting. But what really got my attention with this is 6 individually controllable channels that can handle 80 LEDs per channel. So what we're gonna do today, we're gonna plug in some devices, we're gonna play around with the settings to kind of see what we get, and we are going to intentionally put more LEDs on a single channel to see what happens. Because I am not gonna go through the work of wiring this into my system at home and have it just do the same thing or not work. But I do have 2 of them, and I did that specifically so that if I am dealing with an issue of going over the amount of LEDs per channel, then I could totally separate and be like, this is only for fans, and then the other one is only for water cooling stuff or whatever. And it wasn't even that expensive. I got it on Amazon. I'll put a link down below. I bought it out of pocket. Again, no sponsorship. I've got no real contacts at Razer, nothing happened in there. I think it was like 30 bucks, 30 or 35 bucks. So I don't think the price is terrible, especially for a Razer product, to be honest. So anyway, let's hook it up and let's get it going. I was wrong, actually. I thought it was SATA, but it's not. It's a Molex. That's sad. I don't have a Molex in my system. I'm gonna have to wire one in. Anyway.
What year is it?
I know, right? Anyway, so it is a Molex, which is kind of dumb. I guess I could try and find a barrel connector that has the, what is this? This is a 12 volt, 5 amp, obviously. So I could probably find a barrel connector that's 12 volt, 5 amp to SATA. I'll look just because I'm gonna be lazy. Anyway, that's it. That's all it takes. USB cable, which is right here, and then our barrel connector. And then if we go ahead and plug in, I wonder if I plug in a device right now, will it automatically light up? Because I've been playing around with it. Okay, so this is going to, it's just a reservoir, like a Corsair reservoir pump combo. Okay, so I just got like a random little strip right here. Let me plug this guy in. So yeah, nothing's lighting up, and we'll show you why that is in a second, because it's actually got a really neat feature. This is my distro plate pump thingy-mabobber plugged in there. And then we've got, let me go ahead and unplug a couple of these. So I was playing around with like fan counts to make sure that, you know, I could get a solid amount of devices going here. So here's just like 3 fans daisy chained together right there. So very realistic in the ugliness of it all plugged in. Okay, so they're already lit up right now because I've already been using it. I just made it solid green so you guys have something to look at. But what I think is really neat is it's got this little A right here. And it basically tells you to auto-detect the amount of LEDs in the device. You can still customize and click the amount of LEDs per device if it somehow is wrong. But you hit the little manual or the little refresh there, it pings each thing plugged into each header and says, and I'll do it again. You can see it just sort of pings it and they kind of flicker and then they turn on. It'll tell you how many devices there are. So for instance, I also think it's neat that the channels sort of line up with like where they're plugged in. So you can see I got one on the left, although it's a little reversed. We got 3 on the right, 1 on the left, but it's kind of nice because it'll tell you how many LEDs there are per channel. So you can see this thing right here, this LED strip is saying it's got 16 LEDs. I do think they need to give us a way to like add a custom title there so we can tell it like that's the reservoir. There's 16 LEDs in that reservoir. So it only has it listed as fan or LED strip. They need to give us a way to name it. Like that's important first of all. So here's this little LED, this is this guy right here. We've got another LED strip over here that shows 6, which is this guy, which I think is interesting because it's technically 12, but each one of these are parallel wired. So it just knows that there's 6 LED circuits in here, but there's 2 LEDs per circuit. So it doesn't know that. So I would go in here and say, this is actually 12. That way it knows that, there, see, I just modified it right now. But that way it knows that there are 12 LEDs in here if we're dealing with a count, right? So there's our 12. But we know that the 20 is actually our fans. Our fans have 20 LEDs per ring. So I'm gonna call that one fan, there. So now that I've sort of got that sort of figured out, it's kind of neat because now we can sort of do some math. So you see I've got 3 fans connected. It's important to know that's not total of LEDs of the channel. That is the total LEDs in the device. Because remember, these are daisy chained. So what I mean is like, technically they're split, not just daisy chained, but split. So it knows there's 12 LEDs responding on the controller, but it doesn't know there's 3 devices. You gotta use some math in your own head to say, hey, here's how many LEDs that we're actually using. You could, it says 40, which isn't true. So now we know we're using 60 on that channel with the 3 fans, and we know 80 is the maximum based on what the manual and stuff is saying. So we'll test by adding some more devices to it in a little bit to just sort of see how far we can push it before it starts to do weirdness. Signs of too many LEDs on your channel. Flickering. Maybe 1 or 2 LEDs on a device is flickering. Not being able to get the color that you want. Okay, so let's say you're trying to get yellow or something like that. Well, that's gonna be a blend of different LED brightnesses to get that color just right. A blend of all 3, usually. Depending on, prime colors, right? But anyway, I digress. So if you start noticing you can't get the color to be right, or you're telling it to go yellow and you're getting red, then there's telltale signs right there that you are overloading the channel in the amount of LEDs, and that's because of a amp/volt thing. It can only send 5 volts so far down the line, with each thing siphoning power from the voltage line to where it starts to act wonky. And because the LEDs are controlled by a controller, the controller is being starved of power too if there's too much power draw. And that's where you start getting that weirdness. That's why I also think I blew it out because of the fact that I was putting so much load on that controller in terms of the amount of LEDs that it was pulling that's why now it just doesn't work anymore. Like the colors are just all kinds of off. Anyway, moving on, if we go over here to the lighting side, we can control our brightness per channel. So if you want to know which one that is, like that port 4 right there, right? So you can see it's clearly the reservoir deal right there. We've also got port 1. So we know that port 1 is our reservoir. You can also do global brightness. So you can just bring them all up and down with the same brightness if you want. I like to leave it individual. That way it's easy while I'm programming things to identify what is what. We can also use Chroma Studio to sort of program this all up to do neat effects. So we can go right to Chroma Studio, and you can see our strips and stuff are sort of represented right here as to what they are. This is why I would like more than just strip and fan. So we can like move these devices and lay them out like, your system. So like this is technically the reservoir. So I would put it like here, fans maybe there. Oops, if we got a fan strip on the bottom, fan strip. So you could arrange this kind of how they are in your desktop so that you could kind of get a visualization of what the lighting looks like. So by default right now, you can see everything is just set to green. Now you can do layers and stuff, and this is where it gets a little bit time sinky, and this is why it really sucks to have to redo any of this sort of stuff, because if it breaks like my controller at home did, then I have to go through and do all this again. But you can choose individual LEDs, like I could just be like, I want, you know, this one, this, whatever. You can drag and drop, or we can grab all the devices and create like a neat effect. So I'm gonna go fire. So we made a new layer that's above static, and if the little eye is open and not like closed like that, that means they will stack these effects on top of each other. They won't like cycle through them, they'll play at the same time. So you can get some really cool stuff going on. Now, one thing that's really kind of weird that we're noticing is depending on where you put it in the placement will depend on the colors of the LEDs. So it's like the size of this grid, which can go very big, as you can see, gives you some pretty varying results depending on where you put them. So if I put this strip up here now, it's gonna go like blue. See, teal, whatever color that is. And then and look at the fans. Now the fans are like purpley. But if I take this strip and I move it way down here now and hit save, it's gonna be very violety. So you can get some effects on here based on where you place them, and it's all based on the center point right here. So if we get these like a little bit closer to the center point, so you notice my fans right now don't really have a whole lot of the magenta color going because of where it is right here. And you can see that like represented on the little like ring right there. So if I was to bring it more over here, I'm actually gonna go pretty far down and to the right to start getting some of that magenta in there. Now we should have more magenta going on the fans. There we go. Now we have a bit more of a vaporwave thing that I wanted. Well, that's enough of the tutorial. I mean, you can sit here for hours doing this. Like the density is the number of LEDs that are affected, right? So I'm gonna make it 10 LEDs and hit save. Now there'll be even more LEDs twinkling in there, which is kind of nice. I like that effect more. And then you can even slow it down. I like the idea of it looking nebulous. And that's why I do that. Even though nebulas really aren't moving like that, right? They're just really kind of solid. Anyway, that's enough of that. I want to test now what's going to happen when I plug in more fans that are beyond the amount of LEDs that it's rated for. So we know we have 60 LEDs right now. There's 20 per fan. So I'm going to take this and plug it in. So now we're at 80. Now we're gonna be going to about 100 LEDs right here. Okay, those are working. I'm gonna unplug this guy. It's rated 80 per channel. We are clearly above that at 116. But that's only half the story. Let's see what happens if we set that channel to solid white. Let's see what happens now if I turn off the other effects. Oh, it only grabs some of them right there. So I point that out. It only grabs some. I don't know why it did that. I wonder if it's intelligently knowing now there's too many lights, because look, it won't let me grab all of them. You see that right there? If I go red, save. Nope, it's only grabbing those LEDs right there. Overcurrent protection enabled. I was right. So it did the thing where it discovered there's more power draw than we should be experiencing. And I thought the white looked a little dim. So it says 1, shut down the system and make sure the device is unpowered by turning off the PSU switch. Disconnect any of the RGB devices that could be causing this issue. Turn on the PSU switch, power on the system, and check Razer Synapse. So repeat steps 1 through 3 until the prompt is dismissed. The reason why I want you to disconnect the system or power off the system is because of the fact that they don't want you doing hot plugging. That is actually very comforting to see, because I was just having to wonder what happened at home. But you can see overcurrent. It saw the amount of LEDs I plugged in was not correct. It was too much draw. So I'm really happy to see that. I feel like I made the right choice by going with the Razer Chroma. We just need all these companies to communicate and be open with their software so that we can use software like Signal RGB or Open RGB or whatever other third-party RGB software you want to control everything. So now we should be able to go static white and get a pretty solid white LED out of it. There we go. See, they're a bit brighter now than they were. And it still has the other effects going right now. So if I turn off Starry and Fire, it should just be more solid. I like how they also sort of fade in rather than just turning on. I like how they just sort of slowly fade in. So I tried to kill it. It detected I was trying to kill it and it said, hey, stupid, stop trying to kill me. Forced me to restart the system, which is fine, that's okay. And then now we're back up and running and working just fine. So there you go. I just sort of wanted to take you guys along for the ride of a real problem. I mean, here's the thing. I built, I don't know how many systems now with RGB, and I experienced a real problem of not having enough headers on the motherboard and then using daisy chainable splitters until I broke something. And now I've got this that's gonna allow me to be able to have everything set up and running without having to worry about whether or not I'm gonna hook up too many things. It'll tell me if I do. And I did buy 2 of them, like I said, just in case, because Skunkworks has a lot of lights in it, and I need to make sure that I'm not gonna overwork it. All right, guys, there you go. RGB, something that a lot of people hate, but you know what? You can't get this level of customization in a system without RGB. You have to be able to address each individual LED to get these sort of effects. I know a lot of people out there are gonna be like, it's a Razer product, screw it. And that's your choice. As a consumer, that's what you do. If you don't like something, you don't buy it. But I think the price is okay. I think for like 20 bucks it would have been great, but I think I paid like $36 for it. The link is down in the description below. I'll put it there. Again, not an affiliate. They are not a sponsor. I paid for it. I want to take you along for the ride, and this is how it works. Fortunately, you can save the profiles and stuff. And as you can see, I have not created a profile or anything here. It still says guest. So you could have an online profile set up. And don't ask me why this blue ring is just constantly going. We have no idea why on the test bench this started and won't go away. We'll figure that out later. We just noticed it today. But anyway, you can see I'm doing everything here and as a guest without having to I did not provide any emails or any contact information or set up any accounts. That's just for if you want to have it sync with other devices or be able to log into like your Synapse and download it to other machines and stuff and not have to set it up individually, you can do that. But if you're just like, F you, I don't want to sign up for nothing, you don't have to. It just works as a guest mode. I agree with you, I hate signing up for stuff. I've never signed up for any of that third-party stuff that requires an email, including GeForce Experience. I just don't do it. So I'm with you on that. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Link down below. We'll see you in the next one.